Hi there, and welcome to the Homestead Education Podcast. Do you have a homestead, farm, or just dream of a rural life? This is a show to help you and your kids grow your own food and grow as a person. I'm your host, Kody Hanner. I'm a homesteader, homeschool mom of six, and small town enthusiast. I was raised by an old school rancher and blessed by the grace of God to have been exposed to so much of what rural life has to offer. Join me every week to talk about homesteading, homeschooling, and growth with a homestead education. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Homestead Education Podcast. I don't even know. Do we call it a surprise? I have a really exciting podcast, and I always say exciting, but I'm always excited about all of them. So I have my friend Rachel Hester on today. Her and I have done a podcast before, so I should have gotten you the number, but I did not. So go back and find my podcast with Rachel Hester on raising the homestead dairy sheep. And um, we have a really, really interesting topic to talk to you guys about today that I haven't covered on my podcast before. And after a conversation with Rachel, we realized it's not really being covered in our field the way we'd like to see it covered at all. So welcome.
Thanks for having me, Kody.
That was a really off the cuff intro. So I hope
I was
I
like,
hope
oh,
you
do I talk
feel
now?
no, you cannot talk now. By the way, her and I are actually friends. So
We actually are friends. And I said before we hit record, like I love and hate doing podcasts with my friends because it's like we're trying to be all formal and serious, but like we're friends. So it's like, okay, don't pot shot that inside joke right now. Leave it till later. But
and so anyways, so do you want to tell them just a little bit about you, what you do, just so that they're like all caught up on who you are?
sure. So I am the author of The Guide to Homestead Dairy Sheep, which is my first book.
I was
And
all ready too.
oh, look at us, twinsies. Okay. Well, that was way more influenced me than I ever need to sound.
I I didn't know you were from Southern California. That's so cute.
For like 4 minutes and then I
Oh,
left. So
okay.
okay. But yeah, so I wrote The Guide to Homestead Dairy Sheep, and so I'm mainly known as the sheep girl. Like I convince people to milk sheep instead of goats or cows. So apparently I'm very convincing. So if you listen to me talk, just be warned, I will talk you into sheep, apparently. But
I like it.
I do have a background in nutritional therapy. That's actually what caused my husband and I to want to homestead was we've been both going through some health crisis, his a little bit, but greatly more dramatic than mine. And we actually saw a nutritional therapist, and through working with her, she and I both realized that I was really thinking along the right lines and I could probably benefit from official training with this. So I did go to school for nutritional therapy and it was a certification. And just through the process of trying to source the kind of meat we needed to eat for our digestive system at that point, trying to source a consistent place for raw milk and that kind of thing, we realized, well, we've both always kind of been interested in agriculture. My husband's childhood dream was to farm, so let's just get a homestead and we'll just
I
raise
knew
our
I
own food.
liked him.
It will be cheaper and easier and right, and all the entry-level drug dreams you say to yourself when you buy a piece of property and put animals on it. So
When you try to convince yourself that all that work is worth it.
right. So and when we did we did all the buzzwords. We got poultry and did pastured poultry and pastured eggs and all the things. And we're in central Kentucky, so Kentucky is a very interesting state because if you say homesteading, no one knows what you're talking about. But if you say I'm farming, well, we get that. Like you have a couple of this and a few of that and a few of that. You're not like a commercial farmer because we
Mhm.
don't really have the topography for much commercial farming. But everyone
I
does it.
actually say we're commercial homesteaders.
I noticed you started using that term, and I kind of liked that because it's like we don't have a lot of terms defined right now.
Mhm.
There's a lot of terms floating around,
Yeah.
but they're not really defined. I mean, like I've heard the term homesteader, farmsteader, farm,
Mhm.
and it's like there's not like a set definition for all of those. And so it's like I guess we're more of a farmstead because we're trying to sell more value added products, not the raw material. Like, but
Mhm.
we're not just a home, not I don't want to say just a homestead, but we're not a homestead and that is just for us and a few people we like. Like we're trying to sell
Right.
things off the farm. So
The reason I kind of consider ours the commercial homestead is because our homestead supports us like food and financially, and it kind of support. We sell pigs. I said I wouldn't bring up pigs, but we got to bring up pigs.
right.
um,
You did say,
we
I'm like, don't talk about pigs, but here we are.
yeah. But pigs are what is our main source of income on our farm, and it supports the whole rest of our farm where we're not putting out
Mhm.
anything financially to run our homestead anymore. And like then we grow and locally source like 80% of our own food. And with that, the pigs is what supports that. So, at this point, we raise about
Yeah.
350 hogs a year. So, but we're raising them on dirt and
Yeah.
pasture. They're fed a
Mhm.
local non-GMO feed. Like we're keeping with that homestead style
You're
buzzword.
doing all the homestead principles. You've just
Yeah,
scaled it up to where it's more of a,
exactly. And
right.
I'm
And
not
I would
selling
say that's
these,
more like a,
I'm not selling them to like auction to go to like commercial feed operations and that type of stuff. I'm selling 100% direct to consumer.
yeah. Yeah. So I would say that's more like commercial farm because I mean, you're not selling it to a third party or something like that.
Mhm.
There's no middleman for you.
Yeah.
There's no like you sell it to a big slaughterhouse or
Mhm.
something.
Yeah, the
You're,
only middleman I have is my USDA butcher, so
yeah, keeping it legal.
right. You got to do it.
You do.
We don't want to, but we got to.
And
So,
yeah, no, I understand.
I mean, and, like I was a food safety specialist for years, so like even switching to raw milk was really hard for me. So you're
Yeah.
definitely not going to see me not selling legal meat. Like it's just
Well, and I think this is an interesting bunny trail. We could go on for like 2 seconds. We need to go back
Mhm.
to our main topic because we're gonna stay on topic.
Yes.
But
We did a really bad job on our last episode, so if anyone wants to go listen to that, it's titled the Homestead Sheep Dairy, and we talked about pigs. So yeah.
right, I was trying to promote my book. We talked about pigs for a long time because we just had a really bad farrowing, and I was still in the throes of postpartum recovery, so couldn't stay on top of my life. So
I
anyway,
think it's important to
but
talk about the big picture. So that's yeah,
it is. It's true.
that's how
Well,
it
so
works.
with the USDA slaughterhouse thing, though, I think this is an interesting topic of conversation because, a lot of us get into this lifestyle with either ideals or we're trying to correct something. Like we've seen the brokenness of our food system, so we're trying to get back to a
Hmm.
intact food system. And whatever reason why you're getting into this, there's a lot of emotion, and so you dive headfirst into the buzzwords. And so I think a lot of times for me at least, I know I was tempted to just be like, we're just gonna like process on farm and sell it all under the table and or whatever's. And then when it actually came down to the nuts and bolts, it was like, okay, well, number one, we just don't have the actual time or physical ability to do that. We don't have the acreage to do that to the scale where it would actually be profitable for us. And when you're when you're in the natural farming, natural health world, like there seems to be this misnomer that if it's natural, it can't be bad for you.
And that's not the
And
case.
it's like, well, rattlesnake poison is natural. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, there are natural things that can still kill you.
I'll probably
So,
lose some listeners. Weeds natural.
right. I mean, I learned that a couple weeks ago. I was making clabber and I left the metal lid on the glass jar.
Hmm.
And that's actually, you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to take the lid off and put like a cloth or something over it.
Uh,
And I was tired. I just wasn't thinking. I was like, oh, I have extra milk. I should clabber it, stick it on the counter, and then go to bed. And so the next morning, like I tried it and it tasted fine. And then that evening there were these big like air pockets in the clabber. And so I sent a
oh,
picture to Slavic Beauty Separator, my friend Katya, and I was like,
uh,
hey, is this right? Because I think I smell rotten meat, but like I had rotten meat in my trash can. Like I had thrown away an old like meat wrapper. And so I was like, maybe it's that. I don't know. And she was like, Rachel, do not eat that. Like that can really make you sick. And I was like, well, can I give it to the chickens or pigs? And she's like, oh yeah, they'll be fine, but you won't be. So like you don't eat it. And I was like, but it's clabber, like it's safe raw natural milk. And she's like, and then some natural beasties got in there and turned it into unsafe natural raw milk. And so, that was kind of a wake up call for me because it wasn't like I did anything wrong with animal husbandry or how I milked my sheep or how I processed the milk. It was just the simple fact that I put an old metal lid on this glass jar, and you can't decontaminate that kind of a metal lid properly, which is why you put a cloth on it, and it just affected the chemistry.
Yep.
And again, by God's grace, he set me up for success with a good friend who was like, no, don't do that. But I think it just caused me a moment to pause and go, okay, like, there are safety guidelines that were put into law for reasons. I mean, bovine tuberculosis was causing major health issues
Oh yeah.
amongst our country people, but now that we understand the chemistry behind that, we can then change our animal husbandry practices and change our milk processing practices and
Mhm.
have a safe food that is still raw and healthful and beneficial to you. But
Right.
you
And I
can't
mean,
have,
to even sell my raw milk here in Idaho, my cows have to have their TB vaccines. So,
yeah,
or
which
tested for it or something. I don't remember, but yeah.
yeah, and I mean, I know people who really don't want to vaccinate their cows for TB, and it's like, and I get that perspective as well.
Hmm.
Semicolon, it's like if you are going to move completely away from all modern infrastructure, you really need to understand, like, again, the chemistry of it, like
Hmm.
what species are actually there that can pose actual risks to your health.
Oh yeah.
And then you move beyond. And it's not to say that you should avoid, doing things ancestrally, or you shouldn't, try to avoid these vaccines. You just need to understand why they're there. Like,
I
why was
think,
that?
we kind of do everything like by balance.
Yeah.
And it's just, whether or not we totally trust everything Western or modern at this point. No, we don't, because everything that was considered a conspiracy theory 10 years ago has come true. So,
Well, I guess I want to question everything. That doesn't mean that
mhm,
I don't believe
yeah.
everything, but I do question everything. Like,
Hmm.
okay, why was this
Yeah.
TB vaccine put into place? Well,
Hmm.
people were getting tuberculosis, and there's lots of reasons for that. So,
Yeah.
just asking why across the board
Hmm.
with everyone. I mean, why does the Weston Price say sourdough is better than yeast? I mean, that's not a bad question. Like,
Yeah. And I mean, I'm
if
reading all
anyone
the
is,
time and researching that
yeah,
concept.
yeah. Like, if you can't question anyone, then I feel like that's when you start approaching the abuse. Like,
Hmm.
in the Bible, the Apostle Paul commits the Bereans for asking questions. Like, so if God himself is saying, yes, ask me your questions,
Uh-huh.
then I think that's something we should pay attention to.
Actually,
So,
that's really funny. I saw a reel this morning that was just somebody saying, like, if you aren't falling down to your knees and asking Jesus why every time, you're doing it
mhm,
wrong,
yeah.
And so I was just like, there's so much more to like stop, they're wanting us to not question, and there's so much more to that. But
Yeah, anyone who says don't ask questions, I feel like I need to ask them more questions at this point. Like, if there's like, just don't ask questions, just do it. I'm like, I have more questions actually now that you said that. So,
yeah. So kind of like a preface to the conversation we're working towards, which I think we've kind of started to touch on what it is, and it's that we want to talk about nutrition, but we have a
mhm,
very specific angle that we want to talk to everybody about with nutrition. So
yeah.
kind of, and then we're gonna have something for you guys at the end, that like conversation we want to have with you. So
Mhm,
to kind of preface that, we both have had health reasons that kind of brought us to this homestead journey. Some of my listeners already know, but Rachel and I really plan on sharing this within both of our audiences and a lot of our friends' audiences. So we would like to take a minute to tell you guys both about our health,
mhm.
to talk about why we decided to have this conversation. So if you want to go first, I would love to hear what's going on, and then I'll share our family stuff.
Yeah. I don't think I've actually heard yours start to finish before. So, I'll try to make mine brief. So,
Now I'm like, what's going on with Kyle?
um, yeah, because my husband's health in the last 2 years has been, especially in the last year, has just been really dicey. So I will
Okay.
tell you.
Yeah, take your
So
time. We've got time. So,
okay. So I grew up in a family that had a lot of chronic illness, and these were all genetic illnesses. So I just kind of assumed I would have a genetic illness at some
yeah.
point too.
For people who are only listening, she just did air quotes with
I
that.
did
So,
air quotes. Yeah, sorry. Oh, sorry. Yeah, you do a audio podcast too, don't you?
yeah.
Should probably remember that. Anyway, yeah,
It's
so
okay. That we just fill in the blanks.
there we go. So I just assumed at some point I would have a chronic illness as well. And hopefully it wouldn't be a bad one, right? So my
That's a
aunt,
really like that's a heavy burden to carry.
yeah, I don't, I have other friends who are, I guess, still in like air quotes, normal air quotes, American society, not in homesteading,
Uh,
whatever. And I've
yeah.
heard them say the same thing too, like, oh, my daughter just got diagnosed with celiac. Well, if you shake a tree, 15 chronic diseases fall out of my family tree, so it makes sense my kid would have celiac, and so we'll just figure out. And it's like, oh, that feels so heavy now, but at the time when I
Mhm.
was there, it was just, well, yeah, you're gonna have one, so hopefully it won't be a bad one. So
Yeah.
when I was in college, I had swine flu, the H1N1 influenza, which was terrible. Um, and
My son got it.
so
He had like 108 temperature. Like he was little at the time where they can get those higher ones, but yeah.
oh, that's scary. Yeah, no, and it was bad. I mean, I was knocked flat for about a week. Like friends in college were bringing me food. Like I could barely get up to go to the bathroom. It was not pretty. Well, shortly afterwards, I was diagnosed with hypothyroidism. And my mom has hypothyroidism. There's a couple of people in my family who have it. So I was like, okay, well, that makes sense. I have hypothyroidism. My
So
female,
I just kind of like my thoughts with all those types of things, which maybe you're getting there, but I just wanted to put it out real quick,
yeah,
is nobody ever questions, are you just predisposed to that and you're going to get it if like then if you are exposed to the bad things, you're going
right,
to get it. But if you weren't exposed to the bad things, are you not going to get it?
right.
Like, is the
Well,
genetic part the disease or the predisposition?
so like, is it terrain or is it the germs? And now we opened a whole another can of worms. Well, and some of my
Anyways,
back, yeah, and my background was I grew up fundamentalist conservative, homeschool family, have as many kids as God blesses you with. So making sure our meals were nutrient dense was not a high priority. I mean, I cannot tell you how many boneless, skinless chicken breasts doused in Sam's Club barbecue sauce I have had. Like people have given me barbecue sauce and I regift it just because I can't. Like I can't, even if it's homemade. I'm like, I
oh
cannot
no.
eat barbecue sauce ever again. Now, having said that, someone's gonna mail me some barbecue sauce and be like, but this one's different. But I mean, like we
Well, we
had
love barbecue sauce, so yes, send Rachel barbecue sauce.
okay. Fortunately, I don't have a PO box, so people can't find out where to
No.
get me stuff. But anyway, so I didn't have like a really strong nutritional foundation. I mean, my mom did
Mm,
breastfeed all of us, so we did have that going for us. But I
good
mean,
deal, yeah.
we ate a lot of McDonald's. I mean, we had boneless, skinless chicken breasts. My parents would like, I would crave butter like so bad, and my
Mhm.
parents would say, because I would put a slab of butter on a bagel and they'd be like, well, you're going to die of a heart attack at age 30 because of all that saturated fat.
Well, was it
And
even butter or was it I can't believe it's not butter?
oh, we did the country crock.
Yeah. Well, okay, yeah, we did that, which is
We did,
still not butter.
no, no, it's not. But I'm just saying,
No.
like, we were the ones where it's like, okay, the big, huge tub of
Yeah.
vegetable oil people. And then we had like real butter at Christmas. Okay. Like it was bad.
Right.
So I would crave, and I remember telling my mom, like, no, I want butter. And she's like, no, no, the margarine's cheaper and
Mhm.
also it's better for you. And I was like, well, why is it better for you? And she's like, well, it's because of the fat. And I mean, even as a kid, I remember just going, I don't, that doesn't sound right to me. Well,
I
but
used
between
to be
my,
like, why is it healthier for me to eat all these things out of a package? You
yeah,
can't tell me that this out of a package is
yeah.
better for me than this that's not out of a
Well,
package.
I remember after a soccer game, because I played soccer. So of course we had the
Mhm.
soccer snacks, right? And
Yeah.
someone would bring Twinkies or some little Debbie something. And I
Mhm.
remember one day driving home and I was like, Mom, how do you make Twinkies? Like, what's in it? And she was like, well, probably like flour and eggs and butter and that kind of stuff. And I was like, no, that's not flour. Like that's some weird alien fluff that they just smashed together and made into this,
And
but like
like my tongue is touching the roof of my mouth right now, thinking about the slime that it leaves.
that coating, you can, yeah, with some orange Gatorade. Like,
Oh, of course.
am I like
Although
helping
I
your
will
child
still
along?
not turn down an orange Gatorade sometimes. So,
Okay, well, I never liked it for some reason, but
no.
I digress. So, I remember as a kid, like going, that's not real food. Like, how do you go from something in the field to that package on the grocery store shelves? Like, there's some
Mm.
kind of something that takes it from real food to not real food. So, anyway, but when I was in high school and college, I went on several mission trips overseas to Romania. And
Romania, thank you. I was trying to tell my husband and I couldn't remember.
yeah, it was Romania. I've heard everywhere in the former communist bloc. Like I've heard Russia, Ukraine, Greece, and I'm like, no, just
I said it was Eastern Europe somewhere.
yeah, that works. Eastern Europe is fine. So anyway, so they had not gotten bit by Ansel Keys or the fat phobia. And so so they have this national picnic day, and we went out into the countryside and had this beautiful bonfire, and like everyone brought food, and they were roasting something over an open fire, and they were like, "Hey, do you want some?" And I said, "Sure." And it was pork fatback about 2 inches thick that had been salted, roasted over an open flame, slapped into between two slices of bread, raw onion, and mustard. And they handed it to me, and I was like, I'm gonna die this for the sake of the mission on which I am. I must eat this, and the Lord will just whatever. And I ate it, and I remember going, okay, the texture of the fat's a little weird, but then my whole body, like my cells were just screaming like, we want more of that. And that was where I had raw milk for the first time. Like everything was cooked
Wow.
in lard. Everything was like you're like all of the food there was for peasants to eat in the morning, go out and work a long day in the field,
Yep.
and come back and eat at night and go to bed. Like
Mhm.
no one had time for hypoglycemia. Like that just
Yep.
wasn't a thing. And so I came home and I was like, well, I want to eat like there's some more. And I would cook these beautiful Eastern European dishes, and my parents were like, right. And my parents were legit afraid. Like they were like, there's too much salt, there's too much fat, like you're gonna
Mhm.
kill us. And so that was like my first,
Yeah, I
exposure
get
to
like we can't eat the way you eat. It's just full of fat and sauces, and I'm not eating that way. Okay,
right,
great.
right,
Keep eating out of a can. Have fun.
right, exactly. So I went to college, and I ended up with swine flu. And that's when I was diagnosed with hypothyroidism. And I was like, okay, I'll just live with it. That's just that. So
Mhm.
I ended up so I met my husband, we started dating. Um, we ended up getting married. My parents really were not happy about that. So a huge, huge stress right before we get married. We're still not on speaking terms. So
Oh, I'm
that
so
being
sorry to hear that. My mom is not a fan of my husband either, and it's been almost 10 years. So,
yeah, same 10 years. So big, big, big stress while trying to plan a wedding, which is important for health, and I'll explain why later. So
oh yeah, no, I get it.
yeah. So we get married, and then a month to the day of our wedding anniversary, my husband donated bone marrow to be the match for some cancer patient somewhere. And he went in a healthy, happy, newly married 28-year-old and came out a completely broken man. Like, couldn't function, no personality. He would go to work, come home, go to bed. Like, and had no immune system at that point. And when we reached out to be the match, we are like, what do we do? Because everything you all told us was he would have mild flu-like symptoms and then he'd be fine. And they were like, well, we don't know. And you signed away all of the papers, so that's not our problem. So,
You're like, I'm not asking for you like to be liable for it, but can you help us fix
right. Well,
it?
and our not moderator, but like our liaison person, like she finally said, because they didn't do the traditional bone marrow donation thing where they drill into the bone and actually extract bone marrow that way. They actually gave him a medication that would make the bone marrow leave his bones and go into his bloodstream. And it made him horrifically shit sick before the donation part. And I was like,
Wow.
can't, like, what do I give him? Because like Tylenol's not cutting it, because that's all I knew to use at that point. And so she finally tipped their hand and said, well, this procedure is actually so new, we don't actually know what to do if something goes south.
Oh my gosh.
But remember, you signed away all your papers, so you can't do anything. And this was before I knew again to ask. Like this was part of what made me get to the point
Like
where I
he's
asked.
trying to do this beautiful thing and they don't even
Yeah,
care about him.
right, exactly. And we found out like 10 years later that we could have sued them, but statute of limitations in Kentucky is 5 years. So there's really nothing we can do. And it's like, not that we want to sue them just for suing sake, but we've dumped
Oh
thousands
yeah.
and thousands of dollars into his health. Like
Yeah.
we've dipped into his retirement, and like they're just off scot-free telling people they're saving lives and saving the world. And everyone thinks this is beautiful thing. So anyway, so like this was a huge major thing for me. And since I had just given up my entire family and my entire world for this man, I
Mhm.
was like, excuse my French, I'll be damned if he dies on my watch. Like
Oh yeah.
we're fixing this.
Wait till we
So
get to my story. So yeah.
yeah. So I remember I walked into this, I didn't know these terms, but this woke little hippie grocery store in Louisville, Kentucky. And I
I grew up
walked
in
in,
California, so those were like on every corner. So
yeah, well, it's Kentucky. We don't have those everywhere. So for me to go to one was a big deal.
right.
Like Buddha was all over the front window, and I'm like, I went to Bible college, but the Baptists are not helping. So,
Oh,
uh,
well, yeah, ours never had Buddha. Maybe some pot leaves, but at
well, there was that too. I didn't know what it was though at that
least they're
time.
natural.
It's natural. Exactly. Anyway, so I go to the counter and I was like, I need to talk to your manager. And like, I guess I scared them with my countenance. And so they get the manager and he's like, are you okay? And I was like, no, my husband's dying because of the stupid bone marrow transplant. I don't care what it is or how much it costs or even if it's legal. Give me something to give him because I've been married a month and it's like my husband died, but
Yeah.
he's not dead. But I'm afraid he might be dying. So what do I do? And so love this guy's heart. I'm sure he broke about 15 laws doing this, but he asked me about like what was the procedure and what are his symptoms and all these things. And then he's like, okay, well, if it was bones and his immune system shut down, your immune system's in the gut. And so we need to heal his gut and then we need to repair his bones. So let's give him iron and a probiotic. And like that thought process is very natural to me now, but that was like a huge
You were
like
like, what?
I'm like, your immune system's in your gut? No, it's white blood cells. That's what Magic School Bus says. Like, why would your immune system be in your gut? And
No, I mean, our first part of that journey was gut health too. And I thought, like, I mean, not sorry, there's a plane going overhead. I live right by the tiniest airport in the entire world, but it's right on Border Patrol. So planes land all the time.
it's okay. I
It's
can't hear it, so you're fine.
okay. It's just like a dirt strip, but it was really loud for me. So yeah, that I mean that was for me too. Like the company that was like toting the product was like, and like I said, not to be too crass, but like you'll poop every day and it'll make you better. And I was like, what?
What? Yeah. Why would pooping make you feel better? I don't understand. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I went home and I was like, you are taking this. Like, I will force feed it to you, but you're taking this. And I mean, he was an incredibly picky eater. Like, he tried to make me promise to never cook with onions or garlic, which I learned how to cook in Eastern Europe. I'm like, that's not gonna work. Like, I put onions and garlic in everything. So just ladies, if there's any about me newlyweds here, this is what you do. I said, okay, let's make a compromise. I'll cook it, you taste it, and then if you don't like it, then we can tweak it from there. So that's how we overcame that. And it turned out he really liked onions when it was done well.
My husband
Uh,
thought I was trying to kill him with vegetables. So
yeah, yeah. Whole other topic for another day. How to break your husband from a vegetable-free lifestyle.
meat and potatoes.
Right. So I was like, you're taking this, and he took it, and like a few days later, we actually had a conversation and we actually interacted. And so I reached out to one of my really good friends and I was like, I need you to pray because I feel like the health food store has the answer, but I don't know how to like get all the answers because this was still in what I call our Tylenol ibuprofen days. I mean, we did
Yeah.
not know what to do. And so she said, well, actually, my mom is in school for nutritional therapy and she needs practice clients. So if you'll drive to Indianapolis, she can do a functional evaluation on the both of you and maybe give you some pointers. And I was like, great. So we drove to Indianapolis that next weekend. and and she did this whole functional evaluation. Like we had to fill out this 15-page questionnaire with weird questions like, do your fingernails chip? And do you have hangnails? And do you fart after you eat? And I was like,
Hmm.
what?
Yeah, when you're
Um,
not like doing nutrition and stuff, you're like,
yeah.
what does that have to do with anything? Like,
Yeah, like why do you care if I bloat when I'm PMSing? Everyone bloats when they're PMSing, and why is that your business? Like, why are you asking me that? And so she
I really love where this conversation is going, and not just because, like, haha, we're talking about like farts and stuff, that nobody is talking about this. Like, we
yeah,
really need to have this
we need to have these
conversation.
conversations. Like if you fart after you drink a glass of milk, it doesn't mean you're lactose intolerant. It means your digestion needs healing. And
Hmm.
people either don't like they either know on one way or the other. If they don't know and they don't care, or they don't know and they do care, but they still don't know. And just it needs more conversation. So she did this whole functional evaluation on both of us, and I was like, I'll do it as a formality, but I don't need any help. That's all him. And so she comes to me and she's like, well, if your thyroid is crapped out and you're in pain once a month, that's your body asking for some assistance. And I was
Yeah.
like, no, I'm fine. I don't need to not be in pain once a month. That's cool. Um, and so she did this evaluation of
I'll
him, and
just
she,
take an ibuprofen.
yeah, it's cool. I'll just get Alzheimer's when I'm 30. It's okay. I mean, I'm gonna die of a heart attack anyway, according to my parents, right? So,
Right? Eating that
just
takes that.
all these like just myths that we just have floating around our culture is just crazy to me now that I
Hmm.
know the truth behind it. So she did the evaluation on me, and she's like, we need to heal your gut too. Like your system is not happy. And then she did Kyle's, and she was like, Rachel, I haven't seen anyone with these many issues since I worked on kids in the orphanages in Romania, because she had gone into Romania as well. And she was like, the amount of distress his body is in is like he grew up in an orphanage in Romania. His adrenals are gone. His digestion is non-existent. Like his muscle tension is so tight he can't see straight. And his toxic load was so high. Like she's like, I've not seen a toxic load this high before. And so since then doing stuff, we've talked a lot about it, because I mean his diet made mine look really ancestral and nutrient dense growing up, because his mom was very much into diet culture. She put him on a
Hmm.
diet when he was 10 years old. Like he didn't drink water till he was 3, just really not healing. And so we're like, well, was it from all of that? Was it, I mean, he never worked a normal job. He went straight into emergency services as soon as he was old enough. So
Which is going to
lots
be
of,
hard for him too.
well, I mean, yeah,
Which we
like
should circle back to that as well.
we definitely, I mean, yeah, because military personnel and emergency service personnel, and people in like who work ERs and stuff, it's like my husband at this point went to a class reunion and from graduating from the police academy. I think it was like a 15-year reunion. And he was like, Rachel, I'm the thinnest. I have the most hair. I can keep my train of thought more than anyone else. And I'm still in my first marriage. Like there are so many things that are just accepted
Yeah.
as and he's like, and I'm the only one not on at least one medication, if not 15, for a garden variety of things. And it's
Hmm.
just accepted that that's what is going to happen if you're a paramilitary personnel. And it's like, this is not okay. It's just not okay. So anyway, so she's like, his body's SOSing right now. And so we were like, well, he didn't have a good foundation. And then he donated this bone marrow, and whatever his system had, it just strip mined. So we started this journey of like, okay, we need to repair you from the inside out, because she was like, you are doing repair on a cellular level. She's like, you're basically at this point, you're on the journey. This is like Frodo on his way to Mordor and back. Like the stakes are not high for you. He probably is dying. Like she was really concerned. She's like, he's probably dying. She's like, never have gluten again, never have any soda. Like basically he needs to eat celery and liver, and that's it. And I was like, okay, well, I need to not go quite that extreme. So I went to school for nutritional therapy.
Hmm.
And, in the course of that, I read Omnivore's Dilemma, and we heard about Joel Salatin, and we had this beautiful moment that I'm not going to tell you about, where I'll burst into tears, where my husband's like, we could do this. And he wanted a farm now. So we got this foreclosed property, and we're still dealing with all our health issues at the same time while also starting a farm, which a lot of us do. I don't think we know how crazy we are for doing that when we dive in. So,
If we weren't crazy, I don't think anybody would be like pursuing this movement. So,
well, that's true.
And I'm
That is
saying that
true.
with the most love. Like, I'm proud
Yeah,
of
yeah,
myself for finally like shaking all those like agreements that I've made with myself
yeah.
and being the person that I really want to be. So,
Yes, yeah, exactly. So we were on a good trajectory, I feel like. I mean, his adrenals were starting to repair, like we were healing his gut. We were moving along in the right direction. Well, then we both got COVID, which I've had conversations where people are like, COVID doesn't actually exist. I'm like, we were sick with something and it was
It
really
exists. I think the reason we have it is where the conspiracy is, not whether or not.
it's there or not. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I would
Because I've
agree.
had it 3 times and all 3 times has destroyed me in different ways.
Yeah, so I think there is
I'm
now a
currently regrowing my hair because it
oh
all
gosh.
fell out the last time. So,
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. That's terrifying.
yeah, especially when I'm a public, speaker and
Yeah.
yeah, it's pretty horrifying.
Yeah. Well, you look great. Yeah, so we had COVID and so the funny thing was is I right before we got COVID, I had said I had been really sick that summer with what had been diagnosed as poison ivy. I don't think it was poison ivy, but our dermatologist let me know in very certain clear terms that I didn't know what I was talking about. She did. It was poison ivy. So I had it for about a month and a half. I was completely bedridden the whole time. And it just my gut was so off. And I said to Kyle, like, I think we need to go on GAPS, which is the gut and psychology syndrome diet with Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride. It's like the Marine Corps of the Weston Price diet people.
Okay.
I mean, like the
I follow
first
Weston A. Price a little bit, but I hadn't heard of that one, so I'm making my notes.
okay, yeah. So the GAPS diet is like one of the most intense diets I have ever heard of. If you do the intro diet and then the actual diet. So we did the intro diet, which is the first stage is you have nothing but broth with a little bit of meat in it. And then the next stage is you add like maybe some boiled vegetables. And then the next stage is you can add a raw egg to it. Like it's just really intense. But she's basically going like you're lubricating your gut and healing it. And so the funny thing is I felt great on it. Like I felt my body was just, yes, this is what we need. We want this. And Kyle felt like he'd been hit by a sledgehammer. And he's like, I don't like this. Well, I think number one, he was detoxing a lot harder than I was. And number two, his gallbladder couldn't handle all those fats, which we didn't know at that point
Yeah.
was a thing. So so we're on this intro
Well, my
diet.
husband and I got rid of those, so you know.
Okay, well, we still have ours, but um, so we're doing this intro diet and then we get COVID. So like people from our church were bringing us food, they're helping with farm chores, and I'm like, I can't ask them to do this crazy Nazi diet. Like we'll just eat whatever they bring us. So we were kind of okay for a few months after that, and then he was exposed to something out working the pastures. I don't know if it was poison ivy or if it was a tick or if it was something, but he came in from working the field and the next day had this little bit of a rash. And the next thing we know, it was all over his entire body with severe body inflammation. Like it was really bad. So he went to the doctor and she's like, it's clearly poison ivy. Here's our poison ivy steroids. It kind of sort of cleared up. He finished the steroids and it all came back with a vengeance. So then we went to a dermatologist and she said the same thing. Here's our poison ivy stuff. So we went to 3 different dermatologists and the last one finally was like, this shouldn't be poison ivy.
It's it sounds more like his body like just trying to expel something.
Ding, 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 ding. So, yeah, very good. You win the prize. So,
Maybe he
you know,
should try exfoliating and like get that out.
gosh, well, he's got to exfoliate his entire innards. So I mean, we went to all these doctors, and finally, the last one was just like, I mean, you could do an allergy test if you want to, but you've got to go to Louisville. You've got to be there for 3 days. You can't work when you come home, and it's probably not going to tell you much anyway, because, like, he's the doctor himself said these allergy tests are not as fail safe as we think they are. So it's probably not going to give you the information you need. And I was like, well, then what did we do? Well, then in addition to all of this body stuff, his gallbladder was going back on the fritz, which um I had in my research on this bone marrow donation, I had learned that a lot of people who donate have pancreatic issues afterwards. Well, the liver, gallbladder, and pancreas are all buddies. So Kyle wasn't
Mhm.
necessarily feeling pancreatic issues, he was feeling gallbladder pain. So we'd done tons of gallbladder cleanses and repair and stuff. Like he had done he for a whole year he did one gallbladder cleanse per month. And after that year, like we thought we had healed it enough and he was fine. And it was all coming back. And so we're like, well, let's just go see if you've got stones or what's going on. Cause he tried to cleanse and it didn't really have the same effect. And so he went in for the ultrasound and they're like, you're clean as a whistle. There's no stones in there. And he's like, well, I'm having the exact same symptoms. And like, well, we could do nuclear medicine where you swallow radioactive dye and it floats around your system, and then we put you into, this radioactive thingamajigger and x-ray you, and then your body should cleanse it out afterwards, and maybe that will tell us something. And we were like, there's a lot of room for dying. We
Yeah.
don't want to do that.
Well,
Thank
it
you
sounds
for
like his system's pretty fragile right now anyways. Like, why
right.
would you want to add to that?
Right. So I actually put out on Instagram on my stories where I was like, because I said it's not like I don't have a full toolbox at this point. Like, I
Mhm.
know a lot more than the average Joe. I have the
Yeah.
certification. I have friends, like we were seeing a chiropractor. He was like, well, maybe try going grain free. And so we were figuring out the elimination diet was working, but he had eliminated everything to where he was eating 4 foods. He could only eat poultry. He could sometimes have oats, and he could have blueberries and apples. And then we could add in hazelnut butter, but no other kind of nut. And,
A
it was
boring
just,
diet.
well, and he's in emergency services. Like,
Yeah.
even if I pack a lunch for him,
That's
we
really
don't know if
hard.
he's going to be able to eat it. Like, you need grab and go stuff. And so I put on Instagram where I was like, I need prayer because I don't even know who to talk to at this point. I mean, I have talked to all the right people in all the different circles. One local natural health guy, we saw him and it kind of helped for a minute. But then I went into labor. I had a 36-hour kind of traumatic childbirth. And so it basically set Kyle back. And so this local guy who was helping us was like, oh, well, it's not working. Just go get your gallbladder out and you'll be fine. And we were like, well, see, the thing is, we don't actually know if something's wrong with his gallbladder. It's just those are the symptoms that are presenting himself. So if
Yeah.
they take his gallbladder out and that doesn't fix it,
Then you're just throwing away organs for fun.
right. I was like, so you're going to grow him a new one and put it back? And they were like, well, no, then you're just stuck with no gallbladder. And I said, look, here's the thing. When you take out your gallbladder, your risk for colitis skyrockets. And he already has IBS that we can
Hmm.
barely keep the lid on. I don't want you to take his gallbladder unless you can tell me beyond a shadow of a doubt that it will help him. And they're like, well, no one gets that promise. And I'm like, well, then we'll go find someone who can tell us something that's substantial. So I put out this thing on Instagram where I'm like, Kyle's really sick. He's, and being up with me while I gave birth really just knocked him worse than he was before. I am postpartum and I'm healing. I can't take care of him like I used to, and I don't know who to go to for help. So I am just asking for prayer because our only other option at this point is for him to have this major surgery that no one acts like is a major surgery that will probably make him sicker. So what do I do? So this follower actually messaged me and she's like, "How desperate are you?" And I'm like, I mean, I won't give up my kid, but I'll definitely give up a kidney if that's any kind of, whatever for you.
Right? Yeah.
And she's like, well, I know someone who can help him, but it's really weird. And I'm like, I can do weird. I do not care.
Mhm.
And so she told me about this practitioner who uses a methodology called biofeedback, which Cliff Notes is it's Star Trek medicine.
Okay.
And basically it's run off of frequency medicine. So this machine puts out frequencies that your body interprets as questions, and your body can essentially answer. So like this machine says, hey, how are you? And your body says, here's how I am. And then the machine translates that into like information that
Like
us
wherever your body fills in those frequencies gives
right.
like a data feedback or
Right.
something.
So like for example, like if like my thyroid's not functioning very well, it will throw out my thyroid will throw out lower frequencies than if it was functioning at higher frequency levels. And the machine
Okay.
just measures that.
Totally
So
makes sense because food, there's so much
I,
energy in food and those types of things. Like, yeah.
yeah, and it's funny who gets it and who doesn't get it because some people are like, so you turn completely pagan. And I'm like, no, I love Jesus told me about this actually. So it's just
Yeah.
funny. It's just
You know,
funny.
when we bring religion into it, like I very much consider myself a Christian woman. I grew up Baptist, the whole
Mhm.
thing, but there's definitely moments where like, you're like, I found something, Jesus created this because he put it in
Yeah,
the mind of somebody because that is our free will.
right.
But then, someone, like, for example, like, when I write my books and stuff, people are like, oh, praise Jesus.
Hmm.
Jesus gave me the free will to pursue something that created this for my family, and I thank him for that.
Right.
Jesus didn't write the book, like, and that's kind
Right.
of,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I give Jesus more credit than that he created all, that God created all of us so amazing. And we're
Yeah.
able to
And
do all these things.
Jill Winger said something in one of her podcasts or YouTubes that I thought was fascinating, where she said, I just want to go to people that I grew up with and say, your God is so much bigger than you're allowed to believe. And I really
Yes,
resonate with that, where I'm like, learning about frequencies and how, like, you know, there's this interaction
yeah.
with stuff in our world. I'm like, how cool is it that God made that? Not now I'm going to
Well,
manipulate
yeah,
frequency to give me power that I'm not supposed to have, but it's more like this makes me more in awe of God than I was before. So I think that's fine. So,
absolutely. I mean, like my Southern Baptist pastor, when I graduated from college, it was praise Jesus, but when I left my severely abusive husband, I was the wrong one.
exactly. And that
And so those
we
were
could do
one
a
of those
whole
things,
podcast episode of that, because I have a
right,
family
that
member
started
that
making me
happened too. And
go,
I'm like, look, the Lord doesn't agree with you legalistic people. Anyway,
yeah, let's
so
go back to nutrition. But if you
right. So
needed that
we're doing the
validation that I don't think
biofeedback thing.
you're, if you
Yeah.
needed that validation that I don't think you're a pagan, there it is.
Okay, well, good. I appreciate that. So he's doing biofeedback, and when the lady initially did the biofeedback scan, I mean, she was just like, "How are you functioning?" And he's like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "I don't know how you're able to function given how distressed your body is." And we were like, "Okay, well, what's the problem?" And she's like, "Pretty much everything." And she's like, so, we told her about the bone marrow transplant. She's like, okay, well, that did a huge ding and stuff. But I mean, just the stress of your job, how the nutrition you grew up, like just all these things have compiled onto themselves. And she's like, okay, well, first and foremost, you have pretty much every parasite I can scan you for.
Wow.
And so I
But
was
when
like,
his immune system's so down, he can't control that parasite load at all that all
right,
mammals have.
right. Well, and two, we know now that all this conspiracy theorists have been proven correctly, that when they put stuff in medications, they have to put in heavy metals to make these medications. And I really think that when they did the bone marrow uh transfer, they just flooded his system with heavy metals. And number one, those by themselves wreak havoc. But number two, nature's garbage bin for heavy metals is parasites. Like,
Yeah.
they go and eat those things. Then they poop out more toxins, and then you have a huge issue. So, and I asked her at one point, I'm like, are heavy metals going to be on the topic? Are we going to deal with that next? And she's like, Rachel, we're not moving forward till we get these parasites taken care of. So, um, we've been doing that. We've been using something called rifing, which is more frequency stuff, where essentially you type in a frequency and it will explode the pathogen. So, like, it mimics the frequencies that that particular thing can't handle, and it dies. So, which and I've been trained to use, herbs or homeopathy or that kind of stuff to fluctuate this out. But the problem was, when you don't know the right dosage for that, it was just irritating the parasites, and they were making them sicker. It wasn't actually killing them. So it was like, this is a much more refined, specialized treatment that, for someone who is less sick, they wouldn't have to do that. They could use the herbs and stuff. But where his system was so shot, it was like,
Mhm.
we have to pinpoint this one thing right now and eliminate it, so then we can pinpoint the other thing and on we can go. So, I mean, it really is kind of a miracle, Kyle's whole health journey, because he's had so much going against him, and we're just now getting to where we can figure out what to do to make him healthy. And, like, we were actually talking this afternoon, because he was like, I wish we'd found out about this 10 years ago. And I was like, I so do as well, but God's timing is God's timing, and we know about it now, and we're going to make it through. Like, we have hope. We know there's an end in sight. We don't know where exactly it is, but you're going to feel healthy again, like, consistently. So anyway, so that's his whole health journey. But I mean, in the course of that, like, I've studied homeopathy, I've studied essential oils, I've
Mhm.
studied diet, I've studied, herbs, I've studied some massage. Like, we've used almost every single modality to just keep him functioning. And so, it's really funny when I mention that he's sick and someone doesn't know me, and they're like, "Oh, have you heard of plexus, or have you heard of this one diet?" And I'm like, we are so beyond that. I can't even explain to you how. I'm glad plexus works for you. I really am.
Hey, it works for me. But I mean,
And
that's
I'm
all that
so happy
matters.
for you.
Yeah,
um, but yeah, so that's his journey. And I mean, in the course of all of this and learning about diet, nutrition, and herbs and homeopathy and stuff, I don't have hypothyroidism. I don't have hypothyroidism anymore. Um,
wonderful.
so, I I'm still healing like some fertility stuff and postpartum recovery stuff, but I mean, it's not anything to where it's like I can't figure this out, or I can't heal this, or I can't find someone who can partner with me and get this taken care of. So anyway,
Well,
that's our
you so
saga. So
much
what's
for
yours?
yeah, thank you so much for sharing that story because that it is a lot and it's big and it's complicated and I don't think, there's a lot of people who are going down these roads of
Yeah.
trying to figure out what's wrong
And I'm
and
hearing more
they're
and more
getting
stories
the
of people who can't eat food. Like, and that was the crazy thing for us, is that like for a minute, Kyle couldn't eat our eggs and like our chicken and our pork, but he could run to McDonald's and eat that, and he's like, I hate doing it, but that's what I can eat. And we learned that, again, that was a little parasite thing or whatever, where the real food was making him sick and the fake food wasn't. And then now he was down to 5 foods. And I've heard so many people say, like, I could only eat 4 or 5 foods. And if someone is listening who has that, like, there is hope. You can heal yourself to where you can add in and eat normal food again, but it's just going to take a minute and you're going to have to do really crazy
right.
things to heal yourself. So,
Well, and like the conversation we were kind of having before we started recording is my goal with this podcast was to help people learn the questions they didn't know to ask.
yeah.
So I really hope that story gets somebody asking some questions.
Yeah, I do too.
Did you enjoy today's episode? If so, please head over to your favorite podcast player and leave a comment and review. This helps me to know what you're enjoying and helps others find an episode that can help them. Hey guys, it's Kody here. Wow, does Rachel have an amazing story? Her husband's facing some really intense medical stuff, and she's had some real challenges with her nutritional health. Now, I hope you guys had some really great laughs with us today, and that you'll tune in next week to hear my whole story, and then listen as Rachel and I start to do a deep dive into um, homestead nutritional health. If you guys have any questions that you want us to answer or that you'd like us to do a deeper dive on, please feel free to email myself at hello@thehomesteadeducation.com, or you can reach out to Rachel on social media. She has Whoopsy Daisy Farm, and I will be linking that in the show notes. Can't wait to talk to you guys next week. Thank you for joining me today at the Homestead Education, and I hope that I have given you something to think about this week. To help others find me, please comment and leave a review on your favorite podcast player. You can also follow me on Facebook at The Homestead Education and Instagram at Homestead_education. Do you have questions that you would like answered or just want to say hi? Please email me at hello@thehomesteadeducation.com. Until next time, keep growing!